Have you ever needed to say something so badly it kept you up at night, only to realize you waited too long? What if the words you never spoke were the very ones that could have saved you? What if the person you needed to hear them died before you ever said them out loud? There is nothing more terrifying than screaming for someone who's no longer alive to listen. But that's exactly what I did. I screamed for my father, and he was already gone. This isn't a story wrapped in closure. This is the truth behind every silent room, every held-back tear, every sentence that ended in a pause. Because the courage to finish it came too late. What you're about to hear is not fiction. It's not poetic. It's not beautiful. It's raw, unfinished, painful. It's the kind of truth most people bury with the dead. But I couldn't. This is the letter I never sent, the words I never said, the apology I never made, the questions I never got to ask, the heartbreak I never processed until now. And if you're watching this, if you're still carrying that weight in your chest, still hearing the silence where someone else's voice used to be, then maybe this is more than my letter. Maybe it's yours too. Because what happened between my father and me, it's not just my story. It's the story of every son who wanted to be seen, every child who waited for their parent to come back through the door, every heart that kept hope alive just one day too long. This is about the promises that were never kept, the birthdays missed, the phone calls that never came, the simple, quiet expectations that were crushed under the weight of absence. If you've ever waited for someone who never returned, if you've ever begged the universe for just one more moment, one more sentence, one more breath to make things right, then this is where our stories might meet. Because the truth is, I thought I had more time. I thought I could be braver tomorrow. I thought forgiveness could wait. I thought he'd call. I thought I'd write. I thought the words would come when I needed them most, but I was wrong. And what I've learned is this: time doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't care about your healing, your fear, or your hesitation. It just ends. And when it did, all I had left was my own voice echoing in the dark, words I had never spoken, now too heavy to carry alone. So this is me, finally releasing them. This is me, finally saying everything. Before I begin, if even a part of this cracks something open in your heart, I want you to watch until the end. Not for me, for you. If any of this feels like it could have been your story too, then please, don't look away. You're not alone. You never were. Because what I'm about to share might just be the words you needed to hear all along. I was 15 when he left. No warning, no note, just silence. That kind of silence doesn't fade over time. It grows louder. It sinks into your skin. It crawls under your ribs. It lives there. Every dinner we didn't have, every game he missed, every morning I woke up hoping maybe today he'd show up again. And every night I went to sleep knowing he wouldn't. I had questions. So many questions. Why did you leave? Was I not enough? Did I remind you of something you wanted to forget? But those questions stayed buried, trapped behind clenched teeth and swallowed pride. I didn't ask because I thought I had time. Time to understand. Time to grow up. Time to hear his side of the story. Maybe one day he'd call. Maybe one day we'd meet in some diner, order coffee like strangers pretending to be family. Maybe I'd finally say, "Dad, I'm sorry for hating you." And maybe he'd say, "I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to." But time didn't wait for me. That door, whatever door I thought might open, it closed, quietly, completely, permanently. And I never knocked. The hardest part about silence is that it echoes. Years later, I still hear what I never said. I still picture the scenes in my head. Me standing in front of him, hands shaking, voice cracking, eyes burning, and saying all the things that mattered. Saying I missed him, saying I needed him, saying I was angry and scared and confused. But those words, they never made it out. They got stuck somewhere between my heart and my fear. When someone leaves you in silence, you begin to believe that maybe you deserved it. Maybe you were too much. Maybe you weren't enough. That's what I carried for years. That invisible weight, that emotional wound that never quite closes, and no one saw it. Because grief without closure is quiet. Regret without a face is invisible. You learn to function with the pain. You laugh around it. You build a life on top of it. But it's still there. an unsent letter buried in your chest. There were moments I wanted to scream, moments where the weight of everything I never said felt so heavy I thought it might crush me. But even then, I stayed quiet. I smiled. I moved on. Or at least, I pretended to. And the worst part? I convinced myself I was fine, until the day I heard he was gone. And suddenly, all that silence hit me like a wave. I didn't just lose a father. I lost the version of myself that still believed one day we'd talk, one day we'd heal, one day I'd send that letter. Not through a video, not through a screen, but into his hands. That dream died with him, and what was left was me, still here, still broken, still carrying every word I never said. And maybe someone watching this right now is carrying the same silence. Maybe you've been waiting for the right moment to speak, waiting for the fear to go away, waiting for the pain to shrink enough so it doesn't choke you when you try to talk. But let me tell you something. Silence doesn't get lighter with time. It gets heavier, louder, colder. If you're holding back your own unsent letter, your own truth, your own unfinished story, maybe this is your sign. Maybe this is where you stop waiting. Maybe this is where you start letting it out. If any part of this feels like yours, tell me in the comments. I still have things to say. I remember sitting at the kitchen table staring at an old envelope, blank, untouched, like a grave I couldn't fill. It sat there for hours, just paper and ink. But to me, it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every time I picked up the pen, my hand would shake, my chest would tighten, and the words that lived inside me for so long vanished. Not because they weren't real, but because writing them down made them real. It forced me to face everything I had buried, the anger, the fear, the pain of abandonment, the fact that I had a father who existed, but never showed up. I tried to start with Dear Dad, but the word dad felt like a lie, like a name he never earned. And yet, deep down, that's exactly what I still wanted him to be. That contradiction, it tore me apart. How do you say I forgive you to someone who never apologized? How do you say I love you when every memory screams otherwise? How do you tell someone you needed them when their absence taught you to survive without them? There's a kind of emotional trauma that doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in how you second-guess love, in how you flinch at kindness, in how you pull away when someone tries to get close. That's what he left me. Not just silence, but confusion, identity loss, a lifelong echo of not enough. I wanted to blame him, and for a while I did. I blamed him for every moment I felt invisible, for every time I felt like an outsider in my own skin, for the times I stood at school events watching other dads show up, holding cameras, cheering from the crowd, while I stood alone. I blamed him for the anxiety, the self-doubt, the voices in my head that told me I didn't matter. But with time, that blame turned inward. I started to wonder if maybe it was me. Maybe I was too emotional, too needy, too broken to be loved by the man who helped create me. And that thought, it almost destroyed me. That envelope sat there for weeks, sometimes on the table, sometimes under my bed, sometimes folded into a book I never finished reading. But I never threw it away, because some part of me still hoped, irrationally maybe, that I'd write something worth sending, that I'd find the words, that he'd finally listen, that the story would somehow change. But the truth is, I waited too long, and the letter stayed empty. So this video, this voice, is my letter. This is me, finally saying the words I never wrote. Not for him, not anymore, but for me, and maybe for you. For anyone out there carrying the weight of an unsent letter. For anyone who's been stuck between anger and forgiveness, between longing and letting go. If you've ever held back what needed to be said because you thought it wouldn't matter, or because you were afraid it would, then I know this story isn't just mine. It's ours. And I'm not here to offer answers. Just truth. Just words. Finally spoken. It was a phone call. Just that. A simple vibration on the nightstand, followed by a number I didn't recognize. No sense of urgency. No hint that everything was about to change. I answered, expecting a wrong number or maybe a telemarketer. But what I got was a voice. Flat, cold, clinical, delivering a sentence that still rings in my ears like an unfinished song. He passed this morning. No context, no warning, just a statement, dropped like a stone into the middle of my life. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. There was no goodbye, no final conversation, no moment of closure where I could say, I forgive you, or even ask, why? Just silence. Again, that same familiar silence that had followed me since the day he walked out. Only now it was permanent. It was deafening. It was death. I didn't cry right away. I didn't even speak. I just stood there, phone still to my ear, waiting for something, anything that could change what I'd just heard. Some kind of mistake, a different name, a second call that said, sorry, we got it wrong, but it didn't come. All that came was stillness, and the sudden realization that every word I'd kept locked inside me would never be heard. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat alone in the dark, trying to remember the last time I heard his voice. Not through old voicemails or fading photographs, but for real. The sound of him laughing, or even just breathing, and I couldn't. That was the part that broke me. The forgetting, the finality of it all. You think you'll remember someone forever, but time doesn't work like that. It erases the soft things first. The tone, the warmth, the rhythm of their presence, until all you're left with is the sharp outline of their absence. And then it happened. I broke. I screamed. Loud. Ugly. Broken. The kind of scream that doesn't come from your throat. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere primal. I screamed as if I could cut through the space between life and death, as if sheer volume could undo time, as if pain had a frequency loud enough to reach the dead. But no one answered. Not him. Not the world. Nothing. I screamed because I didn't know what else to do, because crying wasn't enough, because silence had never given me anything but questions. And now, it had stolen my last chance to turn questions into peace. I wasn't mourning the man I lost. I was mourning the words I never gave him, the truth I never said out loud, the letter I never sent. And maybe that's what hurts the most, that we don't just lose people. We lose the futures we imagined with them, the conversations we rehearsed, the moments we assumed would come. I had imagined standing in front of him one day, telling him everything, letting it all out, and maybe, just maybe, hearing something back. But now, that moment was gone, stolen, and I was left holding every unsaid word like a blade, and it cut, deep, quiet, constant. If you've ever screamed in silence, if you've ever begged the universe to bring someone back just long enough to hear what you never got to say, then you know. You know the ache that doesn't fade. You know that there's no such thing as moving on. There's only moving forward with the weight. This is what I would have written if I had the strength to put it on paper, if I had believed, even for a second, that he'd ever open it, read it, let it in. But the truth is, I don't think he ever would have. And maybe that's why I never wrote it. Maybe that's why I'm writing it now, like this, out loud, into the air, where maybe someone else who needs to hear it will catch it before it disappears. Dad, I needed you when I fell apart, when life crushed me, when school was too much, when I got in trouble and didn't know how to ask for help. I needed your voice, not to lecture me, not to punish me, but to tell me I wasn't alone. I needed your arms, not because I couldn't stand, but because I shouldn't have had to stand on my own every single time. I hated you for not being there. I hated how easily you disappeared, how you made absence feel normal, how you turned birthdays into reminders of what was missing. I hated that you existed somewhere, living a life I was never invited into, that you could move on while I stayed stuck in the memory of a man who only ever felt half real. And yet, I love you, still. Not because you earned it, not because you came back, but because I couldn't figure out how to stop. Because love doesn't always require logic. Sometimes it's just there, anchored deep even when the surface breaks. And even though you hurt me, I forgive you. Even if you never asked for it, even if you never would have. That's what this letter is. Not permission, not release, but truth, my truth. And the truth is, I've carried this pain like a second skin. I've tried to peel it off, to outgrow it, to pretend it wasn't shaping everything I did. But it was, and it is. And now, instead of keeping it buried, I'm laying it out in the open, not for you, but for me, and maybe for someone else too. Because I know there's someone watching who needs to hear this. someone who's been holding back their own version of this letter, someone who's kept it locked in their chest, waiting for a moment that may never come. And if that's you, if you're still rehearsing those words in your head, hoping you'll finally be brave enough to say them, then maybe this is your moment. Not to fix what was broken, not to undo the years, but to speak, to release, to finally stop letting silence tell the story. I'm not sending this letter because I think it will be read. I'm speaking it because I know silence has already done enough damage. And if I can say this out loud, maybe someone else will find the courage to do the same. Maybe this voice, this pain, this healing, maybe it becomes a bridge, one that carries someone else out of their own quiet suffering, because no child should grow up thinking their love isn't enough. No son should carry decades of questions into adulthood with no answers. No heart should stay filled with words that were meant to be spoken long ago. If I could have just one more second, I don't think I'd scream. I think I'd whisper. I'd lean in close and say something soft, something fragile, something only he and I would understand. I'd whisper, I never stopped being your son, not even when you disappeared, not even when your silence screamed louder than your presence ever did. Not even when you gave up on being my father. I still carried your name. I still carried the hope. I still wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, you'd come back. This video, this letter, this confession, it's my whisper into the void. My attempt to speak into a silence that has shaped my entire life. And maybe, just maybe, if it echoes inside someone else's heart, it's because they needed to hear it too. I used to think healing would come from answers, from explanations, from getting to look you in the eyes and hear something, anything, that made the pain make sense. But now I know, healing doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from finally saying the truth out loud, from finally letting your story breathe, even if the person it was meant for is no longer around to hear it. You won't hear this, Dad. I know that now, but still, I say it. Still, I send it out there, into the spaces you left behind, because I have to believe that words carry weight, even when they arrive too late. I have to believe that someone out there is watching this, sitting in their own silence, wondering if they'll ever find peace. And this moment becomes the one that helps them start. I wish you could hear what I'm saying now. I wish you could hear the boy inside me that never stopped waiting. I wish you could hear the man I've become, the one who still flinches when Father's Day rolls around. The one who sometimes looks in the mirror and wonders if he's repeating the same patterns, hurting people the way you hurt me. I wish you could hear the forgiveness in my voice, not because you earned it, but because I need it. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that unspoken words don't disappear. They live in us. They shape how we love, how we leave, how we trust. And maybe that's why this letter matters. Because even though you're gone, I'm still here, still speaking, still healing, still choosing to be the kind of person I once needed you to be. And if you're still here, still watching, still listening, I want to ask you something. Was this letter yours too? Was there a moment in this story that felt like your own? Then don't leave this video in silence. Say something. Say it in the comments. Type, "This could have been mine." Type, "I still carry their silence." Or just say, "I'm still healing." Your voice matters. Your story matters, and sometimes the simple act of writing a sentence, of being seen, even by strangers, can start a kind of healing you didn't know you needed. And please, share this. Send it to the person who never got to hear your goodbye, to the sibling who still won't talk about it, to the friend who's always quiet when the topic comes up. Let them know they're not alone, and don't go just yet, because tomorrow I'll tell the story of a daughter who found a letter her mother wrote the night she planned to vanish. A letter that wasn't meant to be read, but that changed everything. Title teaser, she was going to vanish that night, but then her daughter found the letter. If this story found you, don't let it stay silent. Say something, even if it hurts. Comment your truth below, no matter how messy, unfinished, or heavy. Share this with someone who left without saying goodbye, someone who still lives in the spaces between your words. And subscribe, not just for stories, but for healing, because this isn't just a channel, it's a voice for the unsaid. And your voice belongs here too.